The sun dipped low over Carmel City, casting a golden hue across the quiet streets. It was the kind of evening where the sea breeze carried whispers of salt and the faint rustle of palm leaves. The world moved slow here, except for one man. Clint Eastwood, 94 years old, walked with a steady stride. His boots tapped against the sidewalk, each step firm, measured, and unhurried. Age may have creased his skin, but it hadn't touched his resolve. Carmel wasn't just a town to him, it was home. He had served it as mayor, fought for its beauty, and earned the respect of every honest soul within it. But tonight, something was about to test his calm in a way no Hollywood script ever could. The peaceful hum of the evening shattered. Roar. The earth trembled beneath the blast of 5 motorcycles, their engines screaming as they rounded the corner. Chrome glinted under the setting sun. Leather jackets flashed skull emblems and snarling wolves. The air, thick with gasoline, reeked of trouble. Clint's eyes, cold and sharp, tracked them as they passed. His face? Unreadable. Not a twitch, not a blink, just the faintest flare of annoyance at the racket slicing through his evening. But then, screech. The bikers swerved, engines snarling, tires skidding. They doubled back, and suddenly, they were coming for him. The deep growl of their motors pressed against Clint's ears as they circled, their headlights cutting harsh beams through the twilight. The wind from their rush whipped his coat, flapping it against his sides. A voice, rough and dripping with arrogance, cut through the engine growl. "Hey, old-timer." The leader, his name, Marcus, tattooed across his knuckles, his beard as tangled as his intentions. His eyes, cold and mocking, locked onto Clint. "You lost?" he sneered, his lips curling. "This here's our road, and we charge a toll." Another biker, broad, bearded, and itching for trouble, stepped up, his voice thick with malice. "Yeah," he leered, his fingers tugging at Clint's coat. "How about you buy us a little dinner, Grandpa?" The air, cold a second ago, felt hot, tense, alive. But Clint? He stood still. His eyes, those legendary steely eyes, flicked between their faces. No fear, no anger, just that look. The one that, for decades, had frozen men harder than any bullet. His voice, low and even, broke the tension. "You boys looking for a free meal?" He paused, his eyes cutting through them. "Or just some attention?" The bikers' laughter cracked through the street, sharp and jeering. "We're coming with you," Marcus growled, his smirk tightening into something mean. "And you're buying, or we'll take this another way." A silent beat, the engines rumbling, the tension thick. But Clint? He shrugged, and with a calm, measured voice, he said, "Well, suit yourselves." And he walked, not rushed, not rattled, just walked. The bikers, circling him like wolves, jeered and mocked, but something shifted. Behind their bravado was confusion. Because the old man wasn't scared. But that didn't stop them. The diner, warm with the smell of coffee and baked bread, came into view. The soft chatter from inside fell dead as the door opened, and in came Clint, and behind him, like shadows, came the wolves. The soft jingle of the diner's bell barely masked the sudden shift in the air. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups froze halfway to lips. Eyes, wide and questioning, snapped toward the entrance. Clint Eastwood walked in first, calm, steady, but behind him, the bikers. Leather, boots, tattoos, and trouble dripping from every grin. Their heavy steps thudded against the old diner floor, boots grinding into the tile as they spread out like a pack-marking territory. Behind the counter, Martha. The diner's owner, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, felt her heart tighten. She knew Clint, knew his kindness, his loyalty to the town, but she also knew who these men were. Locals whispered nervously, "Isn't that Marcus's crew? They run the old highway. Why are they here?" Clint stepped toward a booth, his voice calm as ever. "Coffee," he said to Martha, sliding into the seat with his familiar, measured ease. "Black." Martha's hand shook as she grabbed the pot. "Clint," she said softly, her voice edged with worry. "Are you—" But his eyes, sharp, steady, cut through her panic. "It's fine, Martha." His voice, smooth but low with steel, anchored her. "Just coffee." But the bikers? They didn't want coffee. They wanted a scene. Marcus, his lips curling into a sneer, slammed his palm against the counter, rattling the salt shakers. "You know," he grinned, his voice loud and mocking, "my boys and I are real hungry." His cold eyes flicked to Clint. "And since Grandpa here invited us," he smirked, "looks like he's paying." The diner, silent. Martha's eyes darted between Clint and the bikers. "You boys want a menu or a leash?" she shot back, her voice snapping like a whip. But Marcus's grin only widened. "Spicy," he chuckled darkly, "but we'll take everything." His boots scraped as he leaned closer to Clint's booth. "And guess who's picking up the check?" His crew chuckled, low and menacing. But Clint? He didn't blink, didn't move, just stirred his coffee. The soft clink of the spoon sounded louder than their threats. Then he spoke, calm, measured. "You sure you boys want to do this?" The air, tight. Marcus's grin curled, his ego prickling at the old man's calm. "What's wrong?" he sneered. "Can't afford it?" Clint's eyes, cool, flinty, met his. "Oh," he said softly, setting his spoon down with a soft tap. "I can afford it." Then, his hand, slow but certain, pulled out his phone. The bikers tensed, eyes flicking between themselves. "What's that for?" Marcus's voice thinned, his smirk cracking with unease. Clint's thumb hovered, calmly. "Thought I'd invite some friends." The biker's eyes narrowed. "You calling the cops, old man?" one of them barked, his voice laced with challenge. But Clint's lips, just barely, twitched. "No," he said smoothly. "Someone worse." The words hung, and something shifted. The biker's laughter stuttered, their bravado cracked. Because in Clint's voice, they felt it, not a threat, a promise. Suddenly, roaring, the call, connected. And Clint only said 2 words. "They're here," the tension, thick as a noose. And then, the distant roar of engines, but not the bikers' engines. Something bigger. The windows trembled. The bikers' eyes flicked to the street, and their faces paled. The distant roar grew louder, rolling through the streets like a thunderstorm, deep, powerful, and heavy with intent. Marcus's smirk vanished. His eyes, sharp with confusion, darted to his crew. "What the hell is that?" he snapped, his voice losing its edge. The first engine came into view, gleaming chrome, blacked-out paint, and patches stitched into leather vests. But it wasn't 5 bikers this time. It was a pack. Motorcycle after motorcycle swarmed into the lot. 10, 15, more than they could count. And every rider? Hard-eyed, battle-worn, and deadly silent. Marcus's face drained. His mouth opened, but no words came. Because on their vests, the emblem was unmistakable. A coiled rattlesnake beneath a banner that read, "The Outriders." The most feared biker group on the West Coast. Inside the diner, the tension turned ice cold. One of Marcus's crew, his voice cracking, muttered, "Yo, Marcus, that's Rick Carter's crew." Marcus's fingers twitched. His smirk was gone, replaced by something tight and cold. Because Rick Carter wasn't just a name, he was legend, a man you don't cross, a man whose enemies vanish. And the worst part, as the bikes lined up, engines rumbling like a growl waiting to snap, the lead rider, Rick Carter himself, stepped off his bike. His boots hit the pavement, solid. And then, his eyes locked on the diner window. His face, deadly calm. But his eyes, cold as a loaded gun, went straight to Clint Eastwood. Inside, Marcus's voice cracked, disbelieving. "You know him?" Clint's reply was smooth as steel. "Yeah." A slow sip of coffee. Then, setting the cup down with a soft clink. "We go way back." The diner held its breath. Because now, the wolves had walked into a bear trap. The door swung open. The bell's soft jingle felt wrong, like a gun being cocked. And in stepped Rick Carter. A man built from leather, road, and consequences. His voice, rough as gravel, carried through the room. "Clint." Clint, his eyes calm but knowing, gave a slight nod. "Rick." No other words, none needed, but the room felt the weight, because what wasn't said was everything. Marcus froze, his bravado shattered. His crew, they stiffened, eyes darting for exits. But Rick, his eyes, cold, unblinking, turned to them, and then a single, flat question. "These friends of yours, Clint?" The air chilled. Clint, his voice smooth, gave the final push. "No," he said calmly. "They're interrupting my coffee." The diner cracked with tension. And Marcus? His face paled. Because he wasn't stupid. He felt it. The storm was here, and he was about to get swallowed. The diner felt airless, like the room itself was holding its breath. Every eye was on Rick Carter, and on Marcus, who now stood stiff as stone. Marcus's voice, thin and cracking with false bravado, broke the silence. "Hey, look," he stammered, his smirk long gone, replaced by tight panic. We didn't mean any trouble." His eyes flicked to Clint, then back to Rick. "Just having some fun with the old man." Rick's boots scraped the floor as he took a slow step forward. His voice, low and rough, pressed against the air like a loaded chamber. "Old man?" His eyes, cold as death, pinned Marcus. "That's Clint Eastwood." A slow, cold pause. Then, "He's earned more respect than you'll ever live to see." The room tightened. And Marcus? His face, sickly pale. Suddenly, clink. Rick's knife, a flash of steel, buried in the countertop, rattling the salt and pepper shakers. And then, his voice, deadly cold. "You crossed him." His hand still on the blade. "So now, you've crossed me." The silence screamed. And Marcus, his bravado, shattered, his legs frozen, his crew silent. And then, Rick's voice, low, final, "Get out." The tension snapped, and Marcus ran. No words, no smirk, just raw fear. His crew scrambled, their boots pounding as they rushed out the door. The rumble of their bikes, fading fast, like prey fleeing the hunter. The diner fell silent. The storm gone. Rick's hand pulled his knife from the counter, smooth, clean, and then, his eyes, softer now, met Clint's. A small nod. "You okay, old friend?" Clint's hand, calm, lifted his coffee. A slow sip, the faintest tug of a smile. "Yeah," he said, his voice low and dry. "Coffee's still hot." A beat. And then, Martha broke the tension, her voice cracking with a grin. "Well, that's the most excitement this place has seen since the jukebox broke." The diner erupted. Laughter, chatter, the crash of relief. Rick, sliding the knife back into his belt, turned to leave, but Clint's voice, soft but clear, stopped him. Rick. Rick paused, glanced back, and Clint, his eyes warm but sharp, said, "Next time." "Coffee's on me." Rick's lips curved. "I'll hold you to that," he said, his voice carrying a smirk, and with a nod, he stepped out, the Outrider's engines thundering as they vanished into the night. The diner settled back into itself, the hum of conversation, the clink of dishes. But something lingered. A lesson. Samantha, wiping a glass, turned to Clint, her eyes wide with something between awe and disbelief. "You didn't even lift a finger," she said, her voice soft with wonder. "How did you do that?" Clint's eyes, clear and sharp, met hers, and his answer was simple. "Respect," he said softly, "isn't taken." A pause. "It's earned." The final shot, Clint, his coffee warm in his hands, the diner calm again, and the legend, still standing, in life and in battle. Sometimes the sharpest weapon is character. And here on Legends Celeb Stories, we share stories that remind you, heroes don't always need fists. Sometimes they only need respect. Subscribe to Doi, Legend Celeb Stories, for more legendary stories where courage, wisdom, and grit collide. Tell us, what would you have done if you were in Clint's boots? Hit that bell, because every story we share carries a lesson worth remembering. Because here at Legend Celeb Stories, legends don't grow old. They grow unforgettable.